feeling blessed the way you are. Today I'm coming on because I'm going to be talking about a topic that, has a lot to it. There's a lot about Ascension that I want to talk about today. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to do a live. Realistically, it's something that a lot of us in the world feel. And then for those of us that don't feel it, have no clue what this is. Now, this is a very different version of what I would call an ascension, or what anyone would see as a next level to our existence. The difference being is that this has been tried. Ascending is not something that is new. Ascending is something that a lot of masters tried to show us throughout the ages and through history. But realistically, this is the time I believe that none of us have ever seen, where many of us are ascending or attempting to ascend at the same time. And there's a lot of different vibes to it. Every single person's journey is different, and that is what is really intrinsic to the ascension journey. And why I call it a journey is because, yes, as those that were ascended masters before us, or enlightened ones, as you want to put it, through history, they found their way through kind of singularly. Okay. However, some of those in history also followed a type of pattern or some type of suiting that is very intrinsic to those of us that are on the ascension journey. It's funny, I put up a short talking about something of a video that shows all the different stages, or what people on an ascension journey can actually say that they've also gone through. It's very interesting that this is something that people unite in some way. Unknowingly, they all vibe through spirit, and they go through these challenges separately but similarly. And what I'm going to talk about is here, if you guys see, I made my lovely board as per usual. But realistically, the first thing that most of us go through, and even those in history all had to go through, was hearing the call. Now, people say that, many are called, but few are chosen. That's one formation of it. Then there are those that are star seeds who feel like they too are on some form of journey. But realistically, the first thing is hearing the ringing or hearing the call and deciding to pick up that call. And what happens is that you end up starting on your levels or starting on your journey, and there are reflections that ignite this as basically tasks or lessons when you first start coming on. And what I'm going to say is that in history, it was very well seen in different persons who were ascended masters and or those who ascended or enlightened. They followed suit. And realistically, why I'm going to bring this up too is that I also found in my own journey, hi Mason, that there was an actual intrinsicness that was found within tarot. There is a similarity into the cycles or the law of tarot as well that I'm going to talk about. And realistically, what happens when you first take this call is that you start to see that the tests are established, or differences in this. And you start to see that within this journey, you start to have to try to work towards things of enlightenment, or opening up your mind to things and possibilities that you never did before. And many persons have done this journey. I would even say those of Yeshua, Siddhartha, some would say Lancelot. There are different characters and different ascended masters that have tried to show us how this is done through the soul of self. And a lot of us do find that these tests and these parts of our journey do find their way through in all of us. So it's, hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So for those of you that are coming on, maybe you too also feel like you're on an ascendant journey or an enlightened path, as some would say. And I kind of wanted to do a breakdown, because we all tend to get to this point where we hear a call, we try to come on and understand ourselves. We're not alone. This ascension journey is going to be the same across the board, or similar, all different life paths, all different things, but we will find common ground. We are not the first to attempt this, and we're following those that have done it before us. So for a lot of us, we find these levels, and I call them the switch. The switch can happen with work, your partner, a death, or in birth. Okay? So what happens is that something shakes you up so intrinsically that you see the world a little differently for once in your journey. And it could be like you losing your job, you realizing you can't stand your job anymore, you realizing that certain laws are preventing you from moving forward in your job, and you find that you're at a plateau. So that could be one way it happens. It can happen with your partner. It could be a devastation through a very major relationship. And it's like, you could say that things like cheating or being left suddenly, or if you find that they start to adopt, your partner starts to adopt a narcissistic pattern or a persona, or they abandon you, and or you guys don't start seeing eye to eye anymore, and then you're left to yourself and you see the world a little differently. Another way this can happen is through death. Sometimes some of us haven't hi guys, haven't had death hit us that hard, but in this particular time, in this particular ascension time, a death of a family member, a lover, child, a friend could be that change for you, that moment that triggers something that brings you open and opens your eyes or makes you hear the call. The last thing I could say is birth. Like for myself, like somebody said, hi mommy, my personal truth started with the birth of my son. It kicked on this elevation, and I also had my partner go. So I had a very big double whammy that got me onto my journey again to find my Christed self on this ascension and enlightened journey. And then also I would say that a birth could also be a creation. You could be starting a brand new job, a brand new business proposition, something new, something totally different and out of the realm of what you did or have done. And for some reason, a lot of us around the world are feeling this, okay? Why I'm saying this is different than ascended masters or those that showed us, let's say like Yeshua, was because they were doing it singularly. Yes, they had apostles and they tried to show them, but there are many of us that are coming on, and I want to say why this is happening. If you see up here, guys, that's my best way of drawing a body. I'm not a very good drawer, but we are beings that have energy centers within all of us. That would be called the chakras. They're their own universes within ourselves in a sense. And as these waves of energy are hitting us, and that's my picture of the sun up there, the sun has been activating us. The sun at the same time, the solar flares, everything has been activating us. This field that I'm drawing is very similar to what people would say is like a battery. So if you could imagine that all of us have these fields around us all the time, what happens is that we start to absorb the rays of the sun, and it's igniting certain parts of ourselves or certain parts of the soul, okay? Like if you could say a lot of us are on the same radio frequency right now. We're tuned into that buzzing of that ascended mind state, okay? And that's the reason why a lot of us are coming on at this time, and not just one soul, the singular person like there has been in the past. This is a different time. This is a lot of us trying to follow this path or journey, which I said starts off with any 4 of those topics. They're major. They make you see something different, and that is you igniting that call. You hear the ringing. You start to see, or you start to notice that you are vibrating, or you're just exuding a different frequency altogether. And if you guys don't know what a frequency means, this is actually what we emanate all day, every day. We are light. We are light beings. That is the first and foremost thing I want to share with all of you, because light is what gets us through this. And this eminence is how we get through it. If you see here, I have like the Kundalini, or let's say the chakra system and our genetic system are kind of intertwined. And what happens is that with each one of these energy centers, as we go through this journey, we're trying to activate these different centers. For most of you, hi guys, I would say the first one that might activate is your throat. It's you speaking your truth. Maybe it was something you never did before, but really, we start to go through all of them. I would say that the root chakra, the first one, is a reality check. You start to realize that your reality is shifted, and it comes from one of those 4 situations, that big earth-shattering change. And when you get that reality check, you ground into this journey. You ground into the idea that something's different and you're going to be different. And the reason why I said it was very similar to tarot, because I said in history, many have tried to do this too. And I'm going to talk about how I'm not a tarot reader per se, but what I would say the first step is what they call the fool, or the novice going off on a journey. They don't know why they're going on a journey. right? They don't know, they are seemingly the fool, but the delirium with the reality that you are living ends up causing you to begin the journey. And when you begin that journey, you start to realize that you're going through your chakras, you're alivening your chakras. You end up going to the next one, which is where you start to kind of break away from the sexual nature. You become more in tune with yourself, and maybe you start to shift that energy into creative endeavors for the first time in your life. Maybe you're somebody who had issues with a partner or with a death, and you've noticed that that energy changed for you, and that's okay. The next one would be your will, your solar plexus, your will to be here, your will to move forward in life. And realistically too, the will to change is a huge one. Most of us haven't ever wanted to change, or most of us never did. And that is where the next card comes in, which is the Magician. This card represents the self-determination or will or confidence, or even some would say the confidence in Christ. It's funny because the reason why I also use these cards is because in history, like I said, those that have tried to ascend, those that have tried to follow this path and journey, this enlightened journey, much like Siddhartha had tried to express before as well. Even a grouping like the Cathars, which were a Christian sect back in the early 1200s and such, they used to use tarot cards to describe the journey. Because it was in a time where if you talked about anything outside of the Catholic Church's want, they would persecute you, you get hung, etc. So there were even people in the scientific community like Galileo and Copernicus, etc., that they would play tarot cards, and not for divination, guys. This was never for divination. It was for games like, you know, Scopa, or for like Tarocchi, which is like Italian card games. But in a time, especially the Middle Ages, they use these cards a lot to describe the ways of ascension or understanding a Christed consciousness. That's how the Cathars use these cards. So it was just to kind of show that there was more to the illumination of oneself versus just, you know, following the same suit. And even Jesus himself didn't come into his ministry without going through his own trials and his own journey, so to speak. And a lot of that was found in the Bible as well. So there are a lot of things that aren't shown to us, but a lot of us are coming onto this journey and we have a lot of similarities, and we may not know why they're happening. But I wanted to give some type of symbolism as to what is happening, so that there's an understanding that we're all connected. And the next thing, once you have that will, you'll notice that you move to the next one, which is a very hard chakra. The hard chakra would be the openness, right? The openness to love. Now, if anybody understands anything about the Christed consciousness, we all know that to love one's neighbor or to love our brothers and sisters is probably one of the hardest things, especially during this journey, because we will see a lot of people turning on us. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of change, a lot of revival, a lot of inspiration, and a lot of responsibility that comes with this. And as we go through this journey, we will notice that certain things are the same. A lot of us lost friends. A lot of us lost family. A lot of us are having people come at us a lot for speaking our truth, or coming out and speaking our word, or trying to open minds and enlighten from the best way we know how, from the inspired self of our own spirit that we have now tried to, I would say, get together with the Christed consciousness. That's really what it is. For all of you out there that may not believe that I believe in Yeshua wholeheartedly, I do. And I feel like Yeshua also went on this journey, much like Siddhartha, much like a lot of the other ascended journeyers and or ascended masters. And mastery in itself, we talk about this, but it is something that is talked about even with the Masons. The Masons also have 33 degrees, and they work through this set up of a journey in itself, a journey through energy manipulation, and a journey through intention, a journey through thought forms, and how to transmute and how to ascend. That's what the 33 degrees really kind of breaks down in a Masonic temple. So I'm saying there's always been kind of rhymes and reasons to the cycles and what we go through, and I'm trying to intermingle and intertwine them all in this talk, okay? So when we get to this stage of the heart and we try to open up our heart to this type of love that has never been attempted before, that means love for ourselves too. We've never loved ourselves enough to try. We've never loved ourselves enough to go forward. And I would say, even when you're looking at these other figures in time, we realize is that we also start to adopt spirit. We start to love what we know. We start to love what we are capable of. And that's where I say the next card comes in, which is the high priest. The high priest, if you see here, is Boaz and Jachim, and that would also be like an intuition on the universe, or a Solomonic tradition of understanding, which represented an establishment of strength, okay? An established strength in ourselves. And I think that that also contributes to the heart and to the openness of that chakra. We start to believe in this. I know that I'm kind of all over here, but I do feel like these rhymes and reasons are transposed all through our culture and all through our traditions. Doesn't matter which one you are, if you're a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Christian, etc. All of the avatars tried to express how to get to these points of enlightenment and differences. The next one would be the throat. Like I said, it's about speaking your truth. Now, that's the truth that you believe. Okay, so right now I'm speaking my truth. That's the truth I believe. And the thing is that what's interesting about the ascension journey is that all of us, or a lot of us that know or feel this, are feeling it kind of congruently. We're all on different journeys. That's the beauty of the journey. They have these similar markers of, like, let's say ego death or shadow work, or basically, like I said, losing friends and family, etc. We're moving forward in our journeys all the time. And then the next thing is to speak that truth, because the thing is, once you get to a certain level, you realize that you have the creativity and you're fruitful, and that's what the Empress represents. Now, what I want to say is that when we look at how this tarot works out, when you even look at it from those older standpoints in the Middle Ages, when they were using these for stories, they tried to express that this was the actual divine gnosis of trying to unite the masculine and the feminine energies within oneself, which ties into what Siddhartha or Buddha was going after, which is the middle path, bringing and merging those energies together, bringing these two sides together to kind of be a cohesive Kundalini. So you're trying to really bring forth, and that's why people think about this twin flame journey. Some say it's people, but sometimes what you could understand is that from the most understand and express stories in time, the twin flame journey had to do with fundamentally finding your masculine and your feminine self, or the Hieros Gambos. That's what it was called back then. I know that's just a random fact, but there is something about that. So realistically, once you've gone through this point of understanding your Empress energy, right, you start to understand your Emperor energy, which is finding the power and the command within yourself. So these two are found in both men and women, okay? The fruitful, the creative, the flourishing, and the finding power, okay? What ends up happening, like I said about the high priestess, is how you end up finding the universal intuition here, which is a feminine quality. You then become the Hierophant, which is mercy, okay? And all change is forming. So these two energies seem to crisscross and mingle within the tarot, or the law of tarot of one. And that is also found a lot within what I said with the cathars, their gnosis and their form of this journey being called the Fool's Journey of Christ. So realistically, this combination of masculine and feminine is not something that hasn't been done or tried or remarked about for many, 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 many centuries. So as you move from the throat, you move to the eye. Now, the reason why the eye is important is because when you unlock that chakra, that's a form of imagination. That has to do with manifestation. That has to do with formulating the new world around you. Okay, realistically, you start to realize that you can shape things the way you want to. And a lot of us have been going through this journey and trying to figure out how to manifest or how to unlock a lot of these different energy centers within us. And that is part of the journey too, because the thing is, these are formulations of our makeup. These are real. Kundalini is real. Our chakras are real. This is actually what we emanate. Yes, you cannot see it with your eye, but if you were to actually, find those counter markers or even do things like biofeedback, you'd find out what frequency and resonance you actually exude. So the thing is that we are currently walking around, and as the sun keeps shining and as our genetics keep getting activated, this innate knowledge of ascension and this path, which was spoken to many other ascended masters, starts to breathe through us. And realistically, with the eye, you start to get that intuition. You start to see forward. You start to discern better. You start to realize that all the people or those that are in, coming at you, you start to learn who's for you, who's not for you. And that also has to do with the eye. You have the ability to see through things that you couldn't see before, because you went through all these different changes and revivals and inspirations. You went through all these different tests and challenges or these trials. So realistically, you end up at this point where you feel like you're triumphant and you overcome. This is where you start to really combine that masculine, the lovers. You make love with your masculine and feminine self. So what ends up happening usually after you feel that triumph, you either go on the chariot, or as some would say, you go off from the world. You go off from the world of sin. Even when we're talking about Siddhartha, or even when we're talking about any of the other masters, they always relinquish what they were doing to go off on this journey, but they also let go of a lot of the world of sin around them. And what I mean by sin is like monetary things. Like in the idea of Siddhartha Gautama, he was a prince who let go of all of his, jewels, etc., just to go follow his enlightened journey or his ascended journey, because it was a calling. He got called and he decided to pick it up. And the same went for Yeshua. He was called at a very young age. He may have known that he was going to have, but he also had to go through these trials. He also went into the desert for 40 days just so that he could have the devil try to tempt him and all of that. They also went through these things. So the thing is that Jesus even knew, because he had already mastered how to open all of these. He knew that Judas was going to deceive him. He knew that his apostles were going to deceive him. How did he know that? Because he had all of these chakras open. He was very well aware. So the chariot is something you can even stay in the same place, but you yourself as a person elevate or change within your own surroundings, okay? And back to, like I said, about the Masons, about transmutation and ascension, you will transmute your world around you through this process. You're going to realize that maybe you don't have to go anywhere, but you yourself is leaving. The old you is leaving. And then what you find is that you find courage in yourself at this time. And you continue in that courage of self. And what happens is that realistically, that's how you start rising to the crown, because the crown is like your independent self, or knowing your true self, knowing you can reach for everything that you need, and know that God is backing you, and know that this journey is not something that we are not all going through. There is a simpatico with us. There is a this resonance in our hearts, our combined hearts, our heart chakras are activated, and we're beaming that resonance. And a lot of us around, it's like we can, like recognizes like, real recognizes real. So it's like, for those of you that are on the journey, you'll sympathize. And for those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, you may be like, what's going on? Or you might be somebody that's like, I think I'm hearing the call. We're all at different stages. There's different waves of this, but that's what's so interesting about this time. It's not one lowly master trying to show. It's a bunch of us all around the world coming on all around the world to do the light work that needs to be done. And that's what is so awesome about this time. I know that somebody earlier had said that, oh, it's occult thinking. And I'm like, no, it's kind of like, I don't know the guy in India, and I don't know the guy in Pakistan, and I don't know the person in Bangladesh, and I don't know the person in South America. But yet, when I watch the videos, I'm like, we all sound the same. How is that possible? How is it possible that Spirit speaks through all of us, that we're all kind of acclimated to this consciousness, or this Christed consciousness? And I think that's what the whole point is. And then what happens is that once we've realized that we're on this journey, we tend to go into a hermit mode. We go into a hermit mode because we're okay with ourselves being alone. We're actually at a stage where we're like, this is time for me to discover more about myself. We know that we're working with the crown. We know that we're going after what we want to go after. And the thing is that we finally feel the strength to do it. We finally feel like we can achieve these things. We know that we can go out talking about God. We know we can go out talking about Yeshua. We know we can go out and start these projects. We know that God's backing us. So when we go into this hermit mode, it's simply because maybe it's like When carpenters go into their, their den where they work with their tools and they whittle, that's what the hermit stage is like. You're actually trying to grow and flourish within yourself. And even at the same time as these other masters, they also did that. We know, like even Siddhartha, when he first went to go be with all of the other priestly such in his village, once he left his kingdom, he realized, he was like, no, I don't think that this is my rhythm. I don't think I'm supposed to be this Buddhist person that just stays in the temple and just listens to this and does Om and meditates all day. He wanted to go off and venture for himself, and he ended up going into the forest and trying to hone in himself and trying to figure things out. And the same happened for Yeshua. So I would honestly say that this part of the journey is very commonplace for all of us. We hermit because we're actually trying to really get to know ourselves within this time. And it's because we've actually been activating, and we're continuing to activate, and we don't make sense to a lot of people on this planet. We make sense to ourselves, but we all have different missions and journeys right now. And the thing is that we may have to hermit to protect ourselves. We may have to protect what's going on energetically with ourselves, because now we're exuding and we're noticing that a lot of people are getting agitated by that, and they have extrasensory. That's the thing that people don't realize. Because most of you that are on this journey, you'll notice that a lot of haters come at you for one reason or another, out of bushes, etc. But what's even more funny is that, can you remember before you started this journey if people hated you as much? I bet you the answer would be no. I bet you once you came on and you started speaking your truth and you opened up that throat chakra and you felt grounded and you literally felt like you were cultivating creativity and the will to be, you'll notice that your empowerment of self started shaking and bothering others. It was really, really hard for others to see you transform within your own right. And you're still not done transforming. There's still way more transforming to do, because we're still here at the hermit stage right now. Not all of us. Some of us have passed the hermit stage, but a lot of us are in the hermit stage. We haven't even executed our full existence because we haven't done activating too. The sun is still going through its motions. The energy is still going through its motions. And if you guys don't think it's an energetic wave, I would ask you, how was the last 10 years for you? Were they different? Would you say that from 10 years ago to now, you recognize the world that you're living in? Answer that question to yourself. Don't have to answer it to me. But what I can say is that that energy wave was felt, and a lot of us got activated, and we've continued to get activated in many different ways, shapes, and forms. We've gone into meditation. We've gone into practicing, let's say, fasting. We've gone into practicing getting away from vices because it doesn't help us. For some reason, a lot of us are giving up a lot of those bad habits, and we don't know why, because realistically, it's part of this journey. Even for those that went on this journey, they knew that they had to shed certain things about themselves. And the next thing I would say is that you accept your destiny. Well, after the hermit stage, when you start to emerge again, you have accepted, and they call this the wheel of fortune, or what I would like to call it is a level up. Once you come out of this hermit stage, you start to notice that you've leveled up, or you've come into a new world of being, that you can't go back to the old version of you. It doesn't really exist anymore. And you go into this wheel of fortune because you're okay to just be spun out into your own destiny, and you're doing totally fine with that. And realistically, as this grows and as you keep going through these revivals and these tests, and you will be tested, God will be testing you, your own soul will be testing you, because as you go through this journey, you'll notice that a lot of the people, places, and things that come at you have recurring basic principles, or they tend to be the same, or they tend to be the same sex or the same situation over and over and over again. And that is like little quizzes that are going to bring you to your test. You need to understand that once you come into a Christed consciousness, you start to have to move differently, act differently. And it's not something that you even have to fight. It's something that comes out of you naturally, and you're actually embodying. And I want everyone to know that if you feel like this is happening to you, there are many of us that are in the same thing. And the last thing is that it's like a justice point, because we start to balance out in ourselves. I would say that even with Siddhartha, he went through this too. He even went through the masculine feminine situation when he ended up meeting Kamala. He ended up uniting with someone else. He also had to learn from others. He also had to live in the world but not belong to it. And a lot of us are in that stage too, where we live in the world, we don't belong to it, and we balance out in a sense. We are okay. We are okay with ourselves. We're okay being weird. We're okay not making sense to the world, because even in those ascended masters journeys, when they had to walk away from certain people, especially ones that they cared about, to go learn about different facets of themselves, they were walking into worlds that didn't make sense, that were shaken up, that they had no previous knowledge of, but they just followed their sense of soul and heart, and that's what guided them all through the time of their own journey. And then for most of us, because I had talked about this twin flame thing, we either united our Kundalini or our masculine and feminine sides of our energy, but some of us actually do need partners, and sometimes those partners can teach us things along the way. And I would even say, for those of you out there, you may not believe me, but I think Yeshua found Mary Magdalene. I think that that was his divine counterpart, and some of us do find that divine counterpart, or we find that divine counterpart in ourselves. And this would be a point where you are okay if you don't have the partner, you have the wisdom, you have the understanding that if that doesn't happen, or it may be happening, or it will happen, because like I said, one of you, when you had that switch happen to you, maybe you lost a partner, or maybe the partner that you had previously to coming onto this journey is not the same partner you started with, right? Realistically, you're like, I don't get along, or I'm not on the same wavelength as this person, and you've kind of shot out of that space. They don't fit in the same space, and you're okay. You are the hanged man. You literally are okay with having all of these things happen, and you have the wisdom and the discernment, and it's not like you can be tricked anymore. It's like you realize you've seen what the Matrix is all about. You've seen all of the shadows. You've seen all of the bad government systems. You've seen all the lies. You are now not worried about actually walking through life, because you know yourself enough at this point of the hanged man through the journey. And I would say that that also happened with Siddhartha, because when he went back to the boatman, and if you guys have never read the story of Siddhartha, it's a very beautiful one about ascension, or about this journey. That's why I bring it up. So he met a boatman at the beginning of his journey that told him some things. And then by the time Siddhartha got to this hanged man stage of his journey, he was revisited, or he met the boatman before, and he knew what the boatman meant about understanding the flow of the river. Because the boatman had told him, if anything you need to learn in this life is found in the flow of the river. And at that point in time, Siddhartha had no clue what the boatman was referring to. But as he went through these stages and he got to this hangman stage, or what I would say is when you're able to discern, or you have the wisdom, he knew when he met the boatman again what that statement meant, what it meant to watch the flow of the river, to be in the moment, to represent yourself wholly in the time of your existence of being. So I feel like, even though people don't understand why I'm going from tarot to Buddha to Yeshua to cathars to tarot cards being used for not only divination, but for telling the same ascension story that I'm telling right now, this is where you get to an ego death, okay? This is death, but this is the point of the ego death, because you, just like Siddhartha got out of the hangman, where you do trust yourself, you know you have the wisdom, you understand the flow of the river like the boatman described, and you get to a point of death where you're like, the ego does not fascinate me anymore. You realize that you are more, you're elevated to the next stage of your existence. And that is truly a beautiful place to be. There are way more parts to this, and there is continued parts as we go on. But when you do get to that river or that boatman again, you at this stage will most likely know what the message is. You'll know who you are in the mix, and you'll know what you need to do. You have probably got most of your chakras on at that point, and that's when the fun starts to begin. Because once your chakras are all on, you've allowed for this beautiful energy to flow through you and to expand further, because as those solar flares or as those solar rays hit you every day and you continue on with all of your fasting, etc., or all the different things, or the getting out of vices, which you've already done, you end up just becoming cleaner and cleaner and cleaner as a temple. And ultimately, that's what a lot of the masters were trying to even Yeshua was trying to teach us intermittent fasting. Even Yeshua was trying to teach us about meditation. Even Yeshua was talking about, getting that throat chakra on. Even Yeshua was trying to show us how, when we get to this lightened stage of understanding, how we can actually find our own abilities within ourselves, because Yeshua was a healer. And the thing was, what Yeshua always said was that if you were to ever heal, or how you become healed, is because of belief in him. Belief was the main thing that made it happen. So once you get to this stage or to this death, you have that belief in yourself, or that ego death has occurred, because you're like, I get it now. I believe in me. I have all of these chakras on. I know that I'm a warrior for Yeshua. I know that I'm a foot soldier for God. And you're okay with that. You are okay with this devil at this point, okay? Because the devil will show up a lot of times. You do have to understand, much like all of these stories, just like Lancelot, just like Siddhartha, there's always going to be points in the story, like even when he also was tempted, himself, Siddhartha, and Yeshua, with this devil character. Because the thing is that as you're heightening, trust me, that other alternate, like I said, there's always going to be these polars. There's always light and dark. There's always something to everything. And you are going to be facing this, because you're going to be in a situation when, once you've really realized your truest self on this ascension journey, like, you'll never know yourself fully, but you will have a stronghold by this point. And this is usually when you're going to get tempted. This is usually when you're going to get tempted off of the journey, or you're going to be going through the shift again, or what some would call a shift in our patience. I would say that this happened to me maybe 8 months ago. You get to a level of your patience with the journey, and it's like, can you open up to more patience? Can you open up? Have you given up? And this stage happens for a lot of us on the journey, where we feel that we're being asked to get off the journey by all this temptation of the world that we left at the beginning. At the beginning full stage, this is like the middle ground. This is like, oh, this is the checkpoint. And the devil is usually at that checkpoint, trying to see if you'll give it up. And this happened for Siddhartha. This happened for Yeshua. Everyone who's been on this journey ends up facing this devil in whatever capacity. It could be your old friends. It could be trying to find solace in your old self, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's like you get a lot of money and you kick off. Whatever the case may be, you may find that is that plateau of where the devil tries to tempt you off of the journey. Because even like I said about the cathars, when they were using tarot to describe this ascension journey, this was actually not the original name of this card. This was called the House of God. Because the thing is that usually, and I know a lot of people might get mad at me for saying this, but the devil will teach you God's grace, okay? Realistically, when the devil's trying to tempt you, like he did with all of our avatars and masters or ascended masters, it's like as if like they're trying to God's teachers trying to test your faith, or you're being brought to God's house. So realistically, in the early 1400s, when this was not used as a divination tool, and it was just a storytelling and a game, this was seen as the house of God. Because the thing is like, you will always go up against the best teacher. You will always go up against the worst tests to see if your faith is true. And that's usually where you are in the journey when this happens. You're tired, you're weary, you think you can't go on, and you have to find that inner faith in God. It's like a checkpoint, like you're meeting the devil, so God's like, are you still with me? That's usually where you're at on that part of the journey. And that happened, like I said, for all of the masters. And I'm just using Siddhartha, Buddha, and Yeshua for these examples. And once you get through this, you end up knowing that you are starting your new life. If you can get through this, if you don't stop at this point, you end up beginning your new life. And your new life starts with temperance. It's like as if you've solidified these wings, so to speak. And I'm not saying all of us are angelics, and I'm not saying all of us are starseeds, and I'm not saying that, but you come to a levity point where you're like, I get this, I understand what's happening, and I'm moving forward on this new version of self. So after you get through that middle checkpoint stage, you usually get to this stage, which is like starting the new life with your wings, or starting the new life with your revived self. Because I said this stages are also about revival. You will be revived multiple times. Like even when people think about when Yeshua went and got resurrected, the resurrection is a very common idea through the ascension journey too. You don't have to physically die to be resurrected. You can actually, your old ego self can die, or your old version of self can die, and that can happen multiple times on this journey. You're like an onion. You're like this, onion that is constantly shedding more layers. And as you shed more layers, you become more exuberant. You actually start to open up more the more you take off. And I know it seems metaphorical right now, but this is an actual energy field that you have, that you are. So as you become more light of self, as you start to realize that you are following this type of like journey and ascension that others have tried to show before, and now hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are feeling the same way and going through the same thing. All of them are different. My journey is different than your journey. We all got different ones, but I bet you a lot that I've said today, you're like, that's happened to me, and that's happened to me, and I think that happened to me 5 months ago. All of us are going to have some type of rubric that is similar to the Ascended Masters. This ascension journey is not just for one now. It's not for Buddha. It's not for Lancelot. It's not for Yeshua. It's not for all those other heroes and all those other stories. It's not one person at a time. It's a lot of us all at once, because there's a lot of the population that we need to champion for, that we need to be heroes for, and show the world like this is how this can be. And it's weird to say, because I never thought of myself like that back in the day. I never thought of myself like that before I had my old life. But I do feel like that now, because the more I speak my truth, the more I fell into understanding how these chakras work and how to open them up, and how that changed my energy field, how that brought in more people, how that actually pushed away all the bad. Not all the bad, but I'm saying it really pushed away a lot of the negative Nellies, or a lot of the downtrodden people that were just looking to suck all my energy. The more I focused on all of these things, and I saw that there were patterns, and I saw that there was a rhyme and reason, much like a lot of different sects and different religions, and or even, like I said, the Masons also had this degree system. There is always a rhyme and a reason to these challenges, and I'm trying to say that that's one of them. Now, what happens after this change of life, you get what they call the tower. Now, the tower can happen many, many times, but usually when you have this shakeup of existence, you've taken that ego self off. You've already met the devil in the sense of being tempted to go back to your old life, or give up on God's journey, or give up on God's plan. You usually end up having to hit a tower. And a tower could just be a crumbling of all the old that you had before. And if you are at this stage, usually you welcome it. Sometimes I would like to say we start with a tower sometimes. As the fool, I think some of us hit a tower first, and then we become the fool on the journey, because the tower can be a good thing or a bad thing. And if you're at a stage where you've evolved and you've understood that there is the rhyme and reason, you sometimes welcome these towers, because you're like, oh, this is going to get rid of more. This is going to make way for new things. This is going to do something different. So technically, I would say here, this is a crashing down of all constraints. And even why I say the tower is interesting, because, and why it could be one of the first cards too, is because when you're getting out of the matrix, or let's say the constraints of the existence that you were being told is real, which in its own right is as real as you want it to be. But if you have found that any of this in this world doesn't make sense, and you're like, I want something new, I want something different, you are part of an old constraint. You actually thinking outside of that box for the first time in your life could be the tower that I'm talking about. That could be happening at the very beginning, before the journey even begins. But a lot of us on the journey know that we get these towers multiple times, because sometimes our energy is calling for it. We come into a space or an energetic way of being that's, we're too small, we're too big for, let's say. We've expanded too large. Our energy field is expanding. It's getting larger and larger, the more chakras and how much broader our chakras work and how much more invigorated our Kundalini becomes, that we just don't fit in the same parameters, the same boxes, the same spaces, the same places. So it's like we can't even go to those places. We can't even be around those people because it's just like we're just too big for our britches at this time. And that's when a tower can happen too. And that could even be like a move. That could be, let's say, your old job. That could be your old business. That could be your old relation. It could be anything that is major for you. So you can have that happen. Now, back to that whole feminine and masculine thing about the Kundalini, like I was talking about, and about the twin flame journey, and about how the cathars use this Fool for Christ journey through the tarot. There was always this feminine and masculine aspect that all of us adopt and all of us have. Two sides. We are yin and yang. We are, trying to mesh and, like the Buddha, try to find that middle ground. So that's why I'm using all these people today. But this is basically the new prospects of shining on, okay? And this is a feminine quality. And the moon in this aspect is I apologize. The star is new prospects and shining on. So you actually come out of this tower and you realize that you are able to shine on and move forward. And that's what makes you the star. Because you are not bogged down by anything anymore, and you're a star within your own right. Because you have now also released your crown. Your crown tells you, or that energy that you've emitted, and that crown opening tells you that you are worthy of all these things. You are worthy of going after all of this. And even when I look at the Buddha, when he comes to that point where he went from being rich and then being poor and then being rich again with Kamala, and it's like he could give away and take it, give or take it, give or take it. That's the point that I'm saying. When you become the star, it's like you're okay no matter what gets thrown at you. You'll still exist. You'll still be the star in your own right, in your own life. And that energetic field of being is quite beautiful. And that's why I think it's very interesting how the tarot, or the law of what of tarot, kind of falls in. And then after you've come to that exuberance, you start to notice that a lot of lies are being revealed. Enemies from within yourself, or enemies from without of yourself. You'll notice that because you start to just emanate and you start to just be yourself in whatever capacity, and not many things faze you as much anymore. Not to say that you don't get tests, not to say that you don't go through what I said, because all of these are levels and they all have their own reflection challenges. You cannot get through these chakra systems. Like I said, you cannot find your grounding, your creativity, your will to be. You cannot go through those without these challenge sets or these reflections coming at you. So what I will say is that at this ending part of the journey, so to speak, and what I will say is that journey can just go to the next level, the next level, the next level. You can go to infinite levels, right? And still be on the journey, the same journey. But let's say somebody only gets to level 2 in their journey before they pass away in life. That's fine. Spirit doesn't care. Or let's say you got to level 5 while you were on it. It's fine. It's all about soul evolution through this time, or even to become a bigger emittance, or to be your best self, or to encompass your best soul self. We don't even know who we are. We don't know our souls completely. This journey goes on for a long time. And like I said, Buddha understood that. Yeshua understood that. They tried to showcase this. And why I say these cards are very interesting is because these archetypes seem to be some of the patterns, or some of the things that all of us on an ascended journey will go through. And this was kind of what the cathars tried to use for this journey of Christ, that they were using the cards for, to explain in a time that they were getting persecuted and killed just for talking about Jesus in this way, to say that he was a master and understood this type of ascension journey, which was very hard to find. But I'm just being honest, the tarot is originally a card game, but it was used even to express science in a time when no one could talk about science because it was against the church. They use these cards to express these archetypes because there is a flow, a pattern, a cycle. There are levels to any of these types of rites of passage, whatever you want, rites of passage of self. It's all about that. So when you get to this point of the moon, a lot is revealed. Enemies within you, enemies around you, and it might be some of the last ones you have to shed and see for yourself. And once everything's kind of revealed, it could even be like, look at what's happening in the world right now. There's a lot of mooning going on because there's a lot of lies coming to the forefront. And as God always said, you know, like, all lies will come to the forefront. Nothing will be hidden under the guise of God. So I feel like we also go through that too. Anybody who is trying to do things in the dark, I think, will be revealed to all of us. And then this would be the feminine aspect. I know, right? It's always the moon, the lies has to be the feminine, but then what hits right after that is the sun, which is the masculine aspect of it. It is between this and this, the lies become revealed, and the last judgment or the last upgrade or the last renewal hits you. Okay, so these two are what happens right at the supposed end of the journey. And then what do you get at the end of all of that? You get the world. So the world is an assured success. It's the resonance of self. It's the voyage of life. It's the joy of life. And the thing is, it's never ending. Alpha, Omega. Like I said, you could hit the world multiple times, because the evolution of journey of self, and that's what I mean about Christed beings. To be in the Christed consciousness is about elevation. It is about this resonance, this expansion, this understanding that we are energy beings as well. And the more we can encompass a consciousness and the more we can adopt it, the more times we can hit this world. Okay, we can go and do this again and again, because every single level may have these archetype structured situations, but how we face them or what we're seeing the next time around may not be the same, and we may get to the next level again. Like, for example, with Buddha, like, there's this level of acceptance, right? Because Buddha went through all these different trials and tribulations, and by the end, because Buddha and Siddhartha Gautama at the time, he left his friend back at the monastery. He had a friend that both of them started their journey at the same time, and one was a seeker. His friend was what you would call the seeker, okay? And Buddha was one that you would call the found, the seeker and the finder. So the reason why this level of acceptance or this world card is that when he ran into his friend at the very end of this journey, basically his friend was still seeking out how to ascend or how to find enlightenment. He was still trying to become like the Buddha. And Buddha is a state of being as well. To be Buddhic or to be ascended or to be enlightened, right? Or ascended master, etc. Or the 33rd degree, you know, in different cultures and different societies, right? Once you get to that level, you're either found, meaning you found yourself. You don't need to keep searching anymore. You found what you're looking for, or you'll be the eternal seeker. You never trust in what you believe, or you want to keep seeking. So there's a difference between those that are on, let's say, just a spiritual journey and those that are trying to ascend to become found. When you get to the end of the world, by here, you're usually found. You know, even though you're going to go on more levels, you found yourself at this point. Not to say that you know yourself, because we can never know truly everything, but you have found yourself at this point. So when Buddha met his friend again, all those years later, I think it was like 40 years later, he was an old man, and his friend was still seeking out the advice of, you know, Siddhartha himself, still trying to find that. He had realized that his friend was going to be an eternal seeker, and some of us will be that eternal seeker, or some of us will get to know who we are, walk into it, know that God is within us, know that we are part of that Christed consciousness, and know that we're going to continue to emanate and grow and have our DNA just keep activating and help us along this journey to understand how to really manipulate and change those thought forms and try to transmute and ascend in all facets, ways, shape, and form. And I wanted today to show you guys through history how this was seen. And this is just like a fragment. I only use the two guys, but there's so many people that went on this hero's journey. There's so many people that kind of follow the archetypes of the tarot as they went through this journey. No, this is not a cult. No, this is not me telling you to change your religion or none of that. This is something you either know or you don't know. This is something you either felt or you didn't feel. And unfortunately, all I can do at this point is try to tell you about it and see if there's a harmonization, see if there's a resonance, some part of what I said or what any other ascended persons are saying right now. If any of this is making sense, then that might mean that you had that little spark or that little flicker or that little ring that has now chimed in your ears saying, hey, hello, you're one of them too, you're at the beginning. So as we go through this ascension, as we go through this wave of ascension, there's going to be people coming on at different times. But I will guarantee you a lot of what we go through is very staged, and not staged in the sense that it's all going to be the same. We're all going to see different lenses, so to speak, of our own trials, our own tribulations, our own things that we got to go through. But ideally, it's so that we go through all of these situations so that we can go through the Kundalini, we can activate all the chakras and be our best version of self so that we can continue on. And maybe we will be the finder and not the seeker for the rest of our lives. And yes, raw vegan does enhance the spiritual abilities. I talked about that before too, about how we get rid of vices, how we start to do intermittent fasting, getting rid of metals, cleaning out the temple. All of that is intertwined in this entire journey. And those steps usually happen within this time because our resonance just starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we can't have those impurities in our lives anymore. All of us are going through this stage of trying to get rid of all the impurities to be our best resident self. So we all intermittently know this somehow. No one told us to do it, but yet we know it. Like some of us used to be drinkers, smokers, promiscuous. We could have been all kinds of different shapes and forms, but it was like once the resonance kicked in, once we started going on this journey, once the ascension wave began, we started shifting and changing, and we didn't know why or how or have reasons. And then we sort of went through these challenges, and we sort of went through these steps to become more wise and understanding, finding that twin flame journey, finding that mixture of masculine and feminine, cleaning out the temple, becoming more wise, finding that discernment, going through the towers, going through the deaths, going through the tests, all to find our most brilliant selves. And we're still not done, and we probably won't be until the end of all of this. But I do want to say that the sun and the radiation and all of the light sources and all of this cleaning of the temple is all part of it to expand us to the best and most beautiful self. So I just want to say good night, everyone. But yes, Chow shows you're right. Vegan's great. All of them are great. You know, sometimes you could be vegan, but if you're still drinking and smoking and doing all kinds of other stuff, maybe that's your next trajectory. And for some of us that gave all that up, maybe veganism is our next trajectory. And it also helps the planet. Just saying, that's a big reason to do that. But a lot of us, someone said they like to buy me a drink. I'm sorry, but I don't really drink that much, but thank you. And anyways, I just want to say that I have a lovely, lovely night to any of you who are still on. I love you lots for coming on. I know this was a long one. But yeah, we're all on this. We all feel it. Or all of us that do feel it. We all kind of vibe at the same vibrance, and we're all listening to the same radio frequency. So thanks for tuning in to my radio frequency today. I hope that you guys liked and learned and maybe saw something, and maybe you got the call, and maybe you figured out what it all means today. So have a good one, guys. Love you lots. Bye-bye for now.